Let's see. All right, we are live. Hey, how you guys doing?
Hello.
Hi, George.
Hey, how you doing? Real good. I just wanted to say thank you so much for being here with me today. Um, and I just kind of want to acknowledge some of the people here with us today. I know Jeff. Jeff said he was the first one in here today. Just Pelhelm Aquatics. Thank you for being here. We have Jamie Torrance. I'm assuming by the last name that must be a family member.
That'll be my nephew from
Oh,
Scotland.
nice for you to join us today. And I know it's kind of a Mal, Aquarium Delirium. Thank you for being here. He was lurking in the background. See, made you come out. And it's the problem with my streams is because I have such a varied schedule. I work 3 shifts based on what day of the week it is, uh, and so I can't really set these streams for a set time because of my work. I would have to miss some of them, but it's sort of been a blessing in disguise because now it allows me to work with whoever wants to be a guest on my show. Case in point, you guys, to find us an hour that's convenient for the both of us. Now, for those of you that are watching us, it's only 3 o'clock for me here and on the Pacific Standard Time, but for Ian and Sarah, it's 11 o'clock at night where you're at, or 2300.
That's
So I was really amazed that that's an hour that you guys were willing to stream. Most people around that time are already on their second dream. But I want to say thank you very much for being here with me.
You're welcome.
And so so that you guys, this is pretty interesting because I've never had this happen to me before. This is the first time where actually somebody that's watched my streams and my videos has actually reached out to me and wanted to participate on one of these live streams. So we have we have Aquarium Magic, which is composed of Ian and Sarah, uh, and I was super excited when they reached out. I know I had seen you guys. You guys, as far as for me, the name seems relatively familiar. Like it's relatively within the last month or so that I started seeing you guys in some of the live streams that I watch. So can you tell us a little bit about you guys selves?
Yeah, so I've always had a YouTube channel, but I recently changed the format of it to aquariumagic probably about 8 weeks ago now.
Okay.
And we've also got other social media platforms which we've changed all of it to aquariumagic.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah, and we're getting good responses from those channels as well. So the YouTube channel itself has only been running under aquariumagic for roughly about 8 or 9 weeks.
Okay.
We feel that we're doing quite okay there, to get the word out about how beautiful this hobby is.
Oh, nice. Now, have you started following some of the live streams just recently, or you were watching under that other name that you guys had?
No, we've only been watching the live streams recently, since we changed the name to aquariumagic about 8 weeks ago.
Oh, okay. So how did you stumble in this community, onto this community over here on all of the, I mean, we have people from everywhere, but it seems like predominantly the people that I've seen you on are some of the American channels.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, well, I started looking at some live streams because I'm interested. I've had this hobby for a long time, and I felt like I needed to be part of a community of fish keepers because I've been in this hobby for a long time, and it's quite nice for me to be with like-minded people. And for Sarah, Sarah got into it recently. It all kind of started a long time ago. We've kind of got into it recently because our children wanted to have fish.
Oh, okay.
And that's how really, for about a couple of months ago, we got fish. I've been in this hobby for a long time, So since I was a boy, I'm originally from Scotland. My dad was a fish keeper, so I learned a lot of stuff from my father. And then years later, because I moved away from Scotland, came down to England. I've been in England for about 35 years. I left the fish keeping hobby since I left Scotland, but I've always had an interest in it. And then when our children wanted to get into it, that's when all the memories come flooding back. I've had fish off and on throughout the years, but that's what really sparked the interest off again.
Okay.
And all the memories of what my dad taught me when I was younger come back into fruition, you see.
And I think for me, I just thought when the kids wanted to get fish, I thought, yeah, okay, well, just kind of go along with it a bit, not quite realizing where it would end up leading. And yeah, just thought it would be a bit of a passing phase, I think.
So up until that point, you had never really been interested in fish or aquariums or anything like that.
No, so I've got very different experience in that I never kept fish before, and didn't, to be honest, really didn't get the attraction with it. Didn't really get it. Just kind of thought, not quite sure what that's all about. But then found that when we did have them, I was kind of coming back from work every day and going and looking at the fish. Not quite sure what's happening to me, but I'm kind of getting into this now.
Well, I'm pretty sure and I can speak for, I think a lot of us, it's really interesting when your partner also really gets involved with the hobby. It could be a good thing and a very bad thing, because a lot of the times what keeps us from overspending is that we have the other partner that's kind of holding us back and go, hey, wait a minute, you can't spend that much money on those fish. And so the downside is when you're both into the hobby, sometimes you can go and make some really impulsive purchases just because both of you guys want them. So I guess there's an upside and an downside to having your partner also involved in the hobby. The nice part is you guys really do get to share a lot of the experiences together, and that's always real neat.
Yeah, for you're right, George. For years I've been wanting to get my hands on tanks, and finally I got there when the children said, "Can we have some fish?" I thought, yes, this might wangle it for me now.
So how many aquariums do you guys have?
So we've got 4 aquariums.
Okay.
Yeah, we've got 2 freshwater ones and 2 tropical ones. But kind of like, if I could kind of maybe take you back to my interest in it. My father, we didn't have a lot of money when we lived in Scotland, so he would go off, take the kids with him, go to rivers, get mud out of the river, get some river water, get some plants, and he taught us quite a lot about how to cultivate aquariums. You always remember that type of stuff. So of course, when the children asked, could we have some fish? I thought, this could be really interesting. Now we've got 4 tanks, and we set up tanks for other people now as well.
Nice. Now, let me ask you this: Have you, Iain, have you kept tanks consistently since you were a kid, or did you take a break from keeping tanks and then come back into the hobby?
Yeah, I took a break. When we got married and then had children, sort of like priorities kind of sort of went to one side. So I had a break for several years, then came back into it.
Okay, because that was kind of my experience. But what I find very interesting is when I was keeping fish, it seemed like the hobby was very different. And when I come back into the hobby, I feel like it's a entirely new hobby in itself, because there's a lot more information out first to begin with, and what I mean by information being accessible is exactly what we're doing is YouTube, and you could find just about anything on this platform. So, but what was also very interesting to me was when I was growing up with tanks, live plants was not really very common. So that's why I find fascinating that your dad, even as early as you being a child, was already keeping plants in the tank. But it makes perfect sense if he was collecting from the wild. Did you find? Is the hobby today the same hobby you remember as a kid?
It's not, no. I mean, when I was a kid, as I say, my father, it was all very natural. I didn't really come across plastic plants, unless I went to a friend's house that had plastic stuff in it, which wasn't what we did when we were a child. And when I then recently got back into it, you'd shop around aquarium centres and it'd be plastic plants everywhere. And this was so unnatural to me because I thought, this is totally weird, you know. So it changed quite a bit because, you know, the aquarium shops we shopping, they mostly have plastic and they have a little bit of natural plant life.
So when you guys were younger, did you understand that the system, the aquarium was a ecosystem, and that there was a cycle, nitrogen cycle going on? Did you understood those concepts since the beginning? Or because for me, I didn't realize that that was happening in my tank. I was just very fortunate that I had very sturdy fish, and they tolerated the abuse that I was putting them through. It wasn't until now that I've gotten older and came back into the hobby that I discovered that I was doing everything wrong, and it was a total miracle that those fish made it while they were under my ownership. But it sounds to me like you had a very good grasp of keeping fish, and I'm assuming your dad understood that by collecting in the wild, he was already collecting all the beneficial bacteria that he needed, or was he doing something different to help the cycle?
Yeah, so basically, we didn't have a lot of money when we were younger. We couldn't afford to go out and buy big tanks. The plastic was more expensive. Plastic plants were more expensive to buy those days. So what my dad decided to do is, he said the most natural way is we'll go down to the river. We can't afford to buy these things from the shops. We'll go down to the river. We'll pick up some mud. We'll plant it out with some sand on top. He explained about the nitrates, the beneficial bacteria, the ecosystem. So after a while, we had about 2 or 3 tanks set up in the house. We didn't even need filters or lights because he kept them in the windows. So it was all very, very natural. That was the way I was kind of brought up. And then when I visit a fish shop, sort of like to pick some fish, it was really strange for me because I would hear the customers asking the staff if that plastic plant would be suitable, what chemicals can we use, and I was kind of like, you don't need all that for a fish tank.
Yeah, it's so interesting how sometimes today within the hobby and the community, stuff that was been common knowledge for years, all of a sudden gets polarized, and you start seeing these divisions because I don't know if it's more because the marketing aspect of the hobby is really taking a stronghold in some of the philosophies of keeping fish, or I don't know, but I hate it when I see these divisions that occur, and people always arguing whether no, you have to do it this way, or it's not going to work. Well, the reality is there's more than one way to do things to begin with. But if you go back to how people were doing it in the past, they didn't have a lot of the technology that exists today, and they were still very successful in keeping fish. That's why I'm finding the fact that your father was teaching you guys this at a young age so fascinating. Did you guys ever have a conversation as to how he acquired this information, or it was never talked about?
My grandparents were fish. Well, my grandparents had a tank as well. So we're now talking back in the 1940s, 1950s. They did exactly the same. That's why my dad learned from my grandparents, and then my father then passed that information on to me. And that's the information I'm passing on to my children as well now. So the beautiful thing about it is you see the natural life cycle and the natural habitat that fish live in. So it's kind of like having a pond or river in your house, you can see everything happening the most natural way.
So now, when you were saying that your dad was collecting the stuff from the rivers, was it just the river bottoms or the creek bottoms, just collecting that substrate, or was it all? What kind of substrate was it? Was it mostly dirt? Was it pebbles? What was the substrate that you guys were using?
Okay, so he would take us down. We would collect the mud in buckets.
Oh, okay.
Yep, just the actual mud from the bottom where the substrate is. Then he would have sand that he had collected from the beach. He'd washed it all out. Then the pebbles, he would get stones and pebbles that were kind of rounded off for the tank as well. Then we'd come back, we'd put the mud in the tank, we'd put the sand from the seaside washed out on top. Then he'd put the pebbles in, but he'd also would go back and get the water from the river as well.
Okay.
Yeah, and then slowly put that in. He would leave that a few days, obviously, and then we'd go back down to the river and he'd be picking out plants by the roots, and then we would come back and he'd plant them into the substrate through the sand, and then we'd then add the fish to it. The fish were always the last things to go into the tank because you'd want to leave it all settled down naturally until, and you'd even collect the critters as well, the bugs and the critters and snails and stuff like that. And he'd explain this is all part of the life cycle and the natural habitat. And
Very nice. So basically, it's literally taking a slice out of that section of the river and bringing the entire ecosystem along with it and putting it in an aquarium.
Absolutely.
So it sounds like you guys were doing what is today referred to as the Wallstead method way before that was even a thing.
Right,
based on what I'm hearing from you. So, and that's why it's one of the biggest arguments you constantly have that I see is always people fighting about whether you need to have filtration or not in an aquarium. And I tell people, it depends what you're trying to accomplish, and also on the fish that you're keeping and how much of a bio load you're keeping. But it sounded like the way you guys were doing it, it was just a filterless. Well, what I call filterless is it didn't have any added mechanical filtration as far as like air driven or it was all basically the material inside the aquarium, the sand, the gravel that was creating your biological filtration.
Absolutely, that you've got spot on.
Nice. And so that happens. You get out of the hobby for a while. Like, it sounds very similar to what I was doing, except I didn't start as a very young kid. I got into it as my teenage years. And then what was it? Well, you said it was your kids wanting fish that brought you back into the hobby. Now, you mentioned that you also have other platforms that you guys put content on. Would you mind sharing what those platforms are?
Yeah, so we were on X, which used to be called Twitter.
Okay.
I've just remodeled that about 2-3 weeks ago. We've also got TikTok, which I remodeled into aquariumagic about 4 weeks ago.
Okay. Yeah, and I was looking at that, and you guys have more of a presence on TikTok than you've been able to get here on YouTube, right? As far as subscribers and stuff like that.
That's right. I mean, the reason why we decided to go for TikTok is because we're trying to get this hobby out to a whole range of people. So with X, there's a middle of the range people there. And then there's YouTube, and then there's Twitter. Twitter's a lot of young people on Twitter, and we're trying to encourage all sorts of people. That's why we've got the 3 platforms to try and get into this hobby. So TikTok has been quite successful because what we do is we add music and we create our own graphics and videos to try and get people into the hobby in a slow way, not just like throwing it in their faces.
Well, TikTok has forced the other platforms to change the way they're doing content because they're trying to keep up with that exactly that format that you talked about. That's why all of a sudden now you have YouTube that allows you to do shorts, and Instagram went from just being a media where you would post pictures to actually allowing you to do these short clips. And I I had kind of stayed away from TikTok for I'm a latecomer to TikTok. Um, I'm a latecomer to all these platforms, to tell you the truth. But I started out with YouTube, and very much like you, I was under my real name, just watching videos, and that's how I started getting into this. I came across some of the bigger channels that are on the fish keeping community, and just slowly from suggestions from some of those streams, you find some of these other channels, and then that kind of led me down this rabbit hole. After realizing that even though we do have a sizable community, I started looking into Instagram on one it wasn't even a live stream with fish. It was something else that I was watching, and they were talking about a lot of people not really taking advantage of Instagram, and that's how I kind of migrated over there. And then once I get there, come to find out, it's the same experience that you were having with TikTok, because you're now all of a sudden you're kind of access to the entire world. It's not just the United States or not just Europe, or it's just everybody. And it's that very simple format. You can go out to a fish tank, record 10, 15 seconds of content, put a nice little trendy soundbite to it, and publish it. So it doesn't take you, it's very easy to create content on that platform, as is TikTok. And that's kind of when being on Instagram, then, I decided, well, what happens over here on TikTok? So I usually stayed away from TikTok because I thought it was all mostly those little trends of dancing and a lot of young kids. And I said, what does that got to do with fish? But after a couple of people on Instagram saying they had accounts over there, finding them leads you to find these other people too. So they do have another community. And it's interesting now that I'm kind of dipping my toes in all three of those formats. Each one is a little different. The communities are a little bit different. The way content gets presented is different, and the interaction within the communities is also very different. How has that experience been with you so far, that you have those multiple platforms?
You're right, George. The three platforms are quite different from each other, so you have to adjust yourself how to perform on those platforms. Is there something you'd like to say about?
Yeah, I think that's the thing, that like the content that we've got on each of those is all slightly different. So it's, you won't necessarily go onto YouTube and see this exactly the same as what's on TikTok. It's all geared, hopefully, more to that audience, really, because I think it's kind of quite different audiences on all of them.
Yeah, that's what we find. There's between X, YouTube, and TikTok. Sorry, there are different audiences, and this is perfect for us because what we're trying to do is reach out to everybody to tell them about this hobby, but just in different ways, really. And it might seem a bit strange for people to see a music video or a Spider-Man video. What we found is our children are so interested, and it's very much a family affair, doing all these aquariums. And we've seen enjoyment and how excited the children get. We thought other families could get a lot of pleasure out of this. So that's why we'll put these Spider-Man videos up, to reach out to that audience. That's why we'll put some music up, like, Motorhead, because we know there's an audience out there, some walkers that have now sort of like got aquariums. They may associate with that, you see. So we're trying to reach out to everybody.
I think the one that took me by surprise the most was the I think it's a YouTube short that we put up of the top of the fish tank with Zootropolis music, and that's got the highest views on our YouTube channel. Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's just whatever whatever you can imagine as far as doing with the content, I mean, you're going to find an audience for it. Like for one of the advantages that TikTok has over any of these platforms is you don't even have to edit, because it has incorporated an AI software that'll take your clip and it'll add all the effects that it's got several options. It'll make it nice for you. It'll put the whatever trending music is at the moment that the algorithm is kind of picking up on. And so it's just plug and play. That's all you're really doing. You don't have to sit there and try to figure out what you're going to do with it. But it's also very curtailed to the type of content that the people on TikTok like. And I noticed that all the clips are usually about 6 seconds or less, because that's kind of what TikTok is known for. But it's not a very good way to put out educational information, but it is a way to be able to get people traffic onto your other channels. And that's something that I've been trying to explain to people since I started doing content, is that if you're not taking advantage of all these other platforms, because I introduced the idea to people and they're like, oh no, I don't want to do anything with TikTok. I don't want to have to do anything with Instagram. That's not my thing. Well, if you're not using those tools to drive audiences to where you want them to see the information and they're free, then don't be complaining that your channel's not growing, that you're not getting the audience that you want. Because, you got to drive people to your channel.
It's a very good point you got. I mean,
sorry.
It's a very good point you got, because this is exactly what we're doing. With the TikTok, we tend to go for maybe up to 30 seconds. So anything from 6 seconds to 30 seconds to try and capture the attention. And we've got the TikTok account connected to the YouTube account. So you can press the YouTube button on TikTok that will take them to our channel. And the same with X. There's a box you can tick on X to take you to the YouTube channel. So it's all been fed into the YouTube channel. So if they're interested in some of these videos we're putting in, I'll bring them back to YouTube to then try and grow a bigger audience. I think that's kind of what we're doing, isn't it?
Yeah, I would be quite interested in looking at the Instagram as well, which we've not at the moment ventured into yet, but I think that would be something that would be good to look at as well.
Yeah.
See, I'm going to go ahead and, if you don't mind, I'm going to share your channel here. So this is, let me see. Yeah, there we go. So this is your guys' channel here on YouTube, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So for those of you guys that are here in the chat, why don't you guys do me a big solid? One of the things that the reasons why I'm doing this is because at one point when I was trying to become a content creator, several of you that are in the chat were very willing to help me gain an audience by either promoting my channel or by allowing me to be a guest on a live stream, or just simply by talking about the content that I'm creating. So for me, this is a small opportunity to do a little bit of paying it forward. And so I'm asking you guys if you guys would be kind enough. I know that you guys support me, but why don't you share a little bit of that support with Ian's channel and Sarah's channel, and so that we can help them get to where they need to go, and hopefully see more of them and here in our community. So as you guys have currently, what is it, 59 videos? Is most of your, I'm assuming most of your videos are more of the short format?
I think yeah, you've got more shorts than longer videos, yeah.
And that's just coming because you guys are coming from your experience from TikTok. So is the TikTok account a little bit, has been around a little bit longer than this, or they all started at the same time?
Was it the YouTube channel started first?
Oh,
and
okay.
Then, yeah, and then kind of started putting it onto TikTok. And then more recently changed the Twitter account.
And now that we've captured some attention, what we're starting to do now is put on longer programs for YouTube, like For example, we've just started a deep substrate, and we're going to go through the whole processes of that. Food that we do. This is the type of food that my dad taught me how to make at home, because we couldn't afford to buy the flakes. So there's lots of that still to come. There's homemade remedies as well you can use to cure your fish. All that's coming up. You don't have to go to a shop and buy it. You can all do it from home. It's unbelievable what's out there in nature.
Yeah, and that was one of the things that I at first I was a little, because I didn't realize it was you and your wife as a team running that channel. And when I came across, I saw that you guys were in the chat. Every time I see a new name appear on any of the chats, it doesn't have to be on mine. I'm always real curious to see who they are, what they're doing, or if they're even doing any content. So I get up there and I start watching some of the shorts. Well, the shorts don't have any spoken words, just the music. So you don't get a lot of information from that.
Yeah.
But the very first video that I think that I saw that was actually like an instructional video was a deep substrate one. And if I'm not mistaken, it's Sarah that's speaking in that video. So I made the assumption that it was Sarah's channel. And it wasn't until you reached out to me that when you sent me the message, I was like, wait a minute, but Ian's channel is a lady doing the stuff. And it wasn't until you explained to me that you guys were doing the channel as a team. So that was kind of interesting to me.
Well, there's an interesting story behind that. That's been deliberately done with Sarah narrating in the background, because what we want to promote is to get more women involved with this.
Yes.
Hobby. And we thought that would be more appealing. And we've noticed this on our analytical data. Since Sarah has been doing the narrating, our women viewers have gone up tenfold, and it's so brilliant, because that's what we want to try and encourage.
No, okay. You know what? I need to apologize, but I need to take a second because my pool guy's coming and my dog's outside. I need to let him in real quick so he can clean our pool. Hold on. Come on, Tony. Bring your bed. Lay down. Lay down. Sorry about that.
Okay.
My pool guy is not very keen of our dog because he's too hyper. He tends to jump on him and he doesn't like it. So he'll send me a text. I thought he would have already been here, but it makes sense that he's running late because we had that big old dust storm happening here yesterday. So yeah, so that was interesting to find that out. I was super excited when I found out you guys were a couple, because it's so true. Although now, from when I first started, what was it, like 2008 or so, I'm starting to see more women willing to step in front of the camera and talk about the hobby, which is really awesome, because I know it was impossible to believe that it was only men being involved in this hobby. So so to see more women creating content, sharing this hobby with us is, it's only going to get better. I mean, they have a keener eye for aquascaping than most of us guys do, and they tend to be a little bit more organized. So it's just, I think it's definitely good, especially if you have young children, young ladies that can have somebody they can look up to as a role model in the hobby and say, oh, if she's doing it, then it's okay for me to like this hobby and be able to get involved with it. So that's why I think it's great to see a little bit more of that.
And Sarah's been instrumental. We've started recently a new project which is very successful. I would just like the viewers to know that we don't get paid for this. We do it all off our own backs. We did sort of like advertise a product on the substrate video for 10% off for people. We don't get any payment for that at all. We don't get any payment for that at all. What interests us though is that product is really, really good. And we're trying to bring that out into the community to say, try this new product and you get 10% off. We're trying to help people try and get things cheaper and more beneficial for them. It's worked for us and it should work for other people. But Sarah could probably explain to you a bit more about the new stuff we've been doing with helping other people with getting into the fish tank scene.
Yeah, so what we've been doing is kind of sourcing tanks that, you know, are really, really low price, so sort of secondhand tanks through Gumtree, Facebook Marketplace, things like that. Getting hold of those tanks, cleaning them up, doing them all up, you know, doing the substrate, putting everything in it that's needed, plants and all the rest of it, and fish eventually once the water's in, and all of that kind of thing, and then kind of giving that to people who are maybe going through a bit of a tough time, because actually knowing how much fish can be really therapeutic and really help a lot of people, and that's something that's kind of, again, kind of really close to our hearts, is kind of, you know, sort of well-being and, you know, mental wellness and all that kind of thing. And so, yeah, just trying to kind of help people out where we can through the hobby.
Well, now that you mentioned that, would you mind sharing a little bit of your guys' background and what it is you guys do?
Yeah, so I'm a mental health nurse. So I work within the NHS with young people, and yeah, so I mean, yeah, I've done that for quite a number of years, and that's something that, yeah, I'm very, very passionate about.
Yeah, I mean, Sarah's been quite polite there. She actually manages a big department across the whole county, so she's got a big job in her hands. And she brought to me the interest of helping people that have got mental health problems, and that's where we thought this might be quite a good thing to help with the recovery of people that this could benefit, because we know the beautiful hobby that we're in. It's very therapeutic and it's very helpful. And me, I'm a health and safety consultant, so but that's really not got a lot to do with the hobby. So we've got our own jobs and our own time, and in our spare time we try and help other people, and we fund this ourselves. Sarah will research the best tanks you can get online. We'll go out and collect them. I'll take tanks out to people's houses that we identified that could use this type of therapeutic thing, and I'll set the tanks up with everything from substrate to sand, and this will take several days in those people's houses. At the same time, they're getting educated, so I'm advising them, they're helping me doing it and putting it together so they can learn from it. Tonight, actually, it was only about an hour ago, I just got back from this young man's house, and he was helping me put it all together. He learned about the plants we were putting in, he learned about the fish that we will eventually put in, and he's so excited. So, and he sent me photographs of it as well. But we will supply things like the filters, the lighting. They don't have to buy anything. And again, it's such a good way of getting people introduced into this hobby that we're in. So we find that, and also we will say to people as well, this is not just the end of it. Once it's set up and once it's completed, our phone number is this number. You can phone us up. We'll come back round. So it's a bit like an advice line. If they're new to it, they can come back to us.
Well, you might have mentioned it, but I might have missed it. So how do people find you guys to be able to get a tank? I mean, is it something that you are putting out there, or are you being people referring them to you? How did that happen?
Do you want to explain?
Yeah, so it's more kind of people that we get to know about, that we, you know, it might be people that we know or someone knows of someone, and, you know, we just kind of doing it as a bit of a gift to those people, really.
So we've not advertised it in any sense, but because there's quite a lot of people out there that we've identified ourselves.
So it's a lot of like friends and families and stuff like that. Okay.
Well, actually beyond that as well, because there'll be people that will just like get to know, and you know, do you want a fish tank? It's a beautiful hobby, and they're so pleased because they don't have to pay for it, and it's a beautiful thing they've got in the house as well. See, and these can be big tanks, they're small tanks as well. But Sarah's the one that will source all these materials. So everything that I use, Sarah will source. There's a lot of work in the background that Sarah does actually, and in her spare time. So that's how we can afford to do it, because she's a bargain hunter.
So based on your knowledge of setting up an aquarium, are you doing it like the way your dad taught you, or are you using some of the new equipment, modern equipment, to help you set up a tank, as far as like filters and stuff like that?
Right. So I've based it on the way my dad showed me, but we'll purchase second-hand pumps, filters, lighting to put in the tank, just to make it easier for them to manage. And also, I'm glad you asked that, because I source my plants from the local garden centre, and the pond plants, I think they call them bog plants in some places. And these plants, you can buy an abundance of them for really cheap prices, different type, the ones that actually work in these aquariums, and I'll plant them in the aquariums, and they are amazing. They just bloom. So it's like having literally a pond in your tank. So we try and go for the cheap stuff. We found aquarium shops will sell aquatic plants, very expensive, very little of it as well. What I found is, going back to the way my dad taught me, is pond plants, bog plants, and they're beautiful as well, and they give such a lot back to the natural environment and habitat that the fish live in. So we try and source cheap plants that way, but are very good for the aquariums.
Yeah, I have another stream that I do with a friend of mine. His name's Steve. His channel number is his channel name is Warrior Planet Tanks, and we go like every other Saturday in the mornings. This upcoming Saturday we're going to have our stream. But that was one of the episodes that we had. Is we were trying to explain people that there's a lot of plants you can buy at a garden shop that are basically aquarium plants, but they've just been grown immersed. Yeah. And we were trying to help them to identify some of those plants, because when you buy them that way, you get a lot more plants and a lot less money. And then you just do a little bit of work in converting them over into aquatic plants. So it's really neat to hear you talk about that, because it's something that we were onto a while back, and it's kind of that we weren't wrong about thinking that way. That it's right. something that it wasn't a crazy idea that we just had. That it's actually something that is common practice.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's the thing from my point of view. Prior to kind of setting up these recent tanks, I literally had, like I say, no idea about fish keeping, and I did really, to be honest, wonder what on earth Iain was doing to start with. So it's kind of like, so I'm just gonna like mix this mud together and do this, and I just thought, why are you putting that in a fish tank? Because all people do is you get gravel and you stick plastic plants and you put in fish. I don't really understand what you're doing really. So kind of the mud and then sort of layering it with the sand, and I just kind of thought I'll just leave him to it, doing whatever he wants to do. But then actually it kind of now does make a lot of sense. And then he was kind of going off out to a garden centre and coming back with all these plants, and I was thinking that's not really going to work. You're supposed to go to a shop and buy the proper aquarium stuff, but actually a few weeks later I was pleasantly surprised, and could then kind of understand it and get it. And I thought actually I literally had no idea that you that you could use a mud substrate, that you could use sand, that you could, in my head that didn't make any sense. And I think actually initially I was kind of thinking, I don't understand how it would even all stay at the bottom. Go all around the tank. But obviously it makes a lot of sense now. But at the time I was kind of didn't really quite get what was going on.
I think that would be a great video for you to do, Ian. One of those trips that you do to the plant store or wherever it is you get your plants, and kind of share that experience with us. I'd love to see something like that. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is exactly what our videos are going to be consistent of. So the first video we've done is mixing the substrate up. We've already started filming the next. We've already filmed me going out to the garden centre with the children to get the plants. So that's been edited at the minute. And 2 days ago, I took the children out to the pond. We collected pond water. So that will be, so it's all going to be in sections. So you see exactly, very instructional, how to do it the most natural way.
Yeah, here in the United States, there's a gentleman that goes by the name of Father Fish, who's been talking about the same exact thing, about going out into the waterways, collecting the natural life that's there, the organisms, to try to make a complete ecosystem. I've discovered over my trials and errors that if you want to have a successful tank, you have to have everything within the tank. I mean, you just can't, like if you have these scuds and all these little microorganisms that are living in there, although they could probably seem unappealing to most people, for me, it's a sign that there's life in that aquarium. And is one of the major reasons why I can go away from my fish room for days at a time and not worry about anything bad happening as far as the fish not eating or anything like that, because it's a self-sustaining environment. And I don't think I would do things any different anymore now that I've learned that. And and it just seems like sorry about that. It was our little vacuum cleaner was going through its cleaning cycle, and it gets really loud. I don't know if you guys could hear that or not, so I muted it for a second. But yeah, it's just what I find it fascinating that a lot of the stuff that I was kind of stumbled upon on myself and watching other videos, that it's something that like somebody like you has been doing for years. And it makes total sense, because if you go out to a natural waterway, they're not running pump filters. They're not running all that. Granted, the water is always moving. That is true, especially if it's a creek or a river or something like that. But if you look at a lake, it's a lot of the times, unless it's raining or something, or it has a natural spring that feeds into it. Yeah. That's pretty much standing water. Obviously, the volume of water is a lot more, but it's no different. You're just scaling it down to what you're keeping at home. So, but
and this is why the people we set up tanks for will put a pump in there just to keep the water moving. And I said to Sarah weeks ago, it was so frustrating listening to aquarium shops selling a lot of plastic stuff to families. And I thought, we need to get the message out there that you can actually do it really cheap from the natural environment. And otherwise, you're going to be spending a lot of money at these aquarium shops. And that's fine if people want to put plastic stuff in the tanks, and that's absolutely fine. But maybe give them the opportunity to realize that there's other things out there that you can do.
Yeah. Well, one of the things is, my experiences when I was living in Mexico and coming from Mexico is there's a lot of people out there that don't have the means to be able to buy an aquarium, stuff like that. But the desire to keep fish is still there. So they tend to get very creative. And this is what I try to explain to people. If you can find a vessel that'll hold water, you can make it into a fish tank. And one of the things that was really nice that I stumbled upon once I started looking at YouTube in the United States is that it's not uncommon for people to have plastic totes that are set up as, either an emergency hospital tank or a quarantine tank, or just simply as an aquarium or a little indoor pond and stuff like that. So to say that you can't purchase a glass box to keep an aquarium does not mean you can't keep fish and have an aquarium.
Exactly, yeah, and I totally agree with you, George. I've actually got my backyard, my garden has got plastic tubs all over the place with rainwater, with plants in it, with all sorts in it, mud in it, and you can use any of that. You don't need a glass tank. You can use a plastic box to have fish in if you want to.
Oh, and it's just and what kind of led me down that is if you look at some of the other countries, the way they're keeping fish, especially the breeders, the one thing that I always found fascinating was how they use the insulation inside of a refrigerator, and they turn that into a big old tub, and they're breeding fish out of that. They'll build out of scrap wood a rectangular box. They'll light it with some tarps, and they make a fish tank out of that, and it's a breeding project. So the only limiting factor that I see is what your imagination limits you to. Because I've seen some beautiful outdoor ponds created with styrofoam that then they'll reinforce with the cement facade on it, and it becomes a very nice patio outdoor, cemented pond. So if it's just wherever there's a little bit of ingenuity, you'll be able to create a fish tank relatively easy. So there's really no excuse why people can't have something if they really wanted to keep fish.
And I think you're so right. And I think this is part of where education is really important. People think they have to go to an aquarium shop to buy everything from there, but you can actually do it. If you've not even got the money, you can do it the way we do it, and it's cheap. People can afford it. You can even be living in an apartment that's high up. We call it a flat. The stuff that we are going into now, you don't even need a garden. You can get all these things at hand. Especially if you're living in a tower block, you can still have an aquarium.
Yeah, so that's what I've really enjoyed, or I think why I even gravitate to like the nano species kind of fish, the smaller ones, is because at any whim I can find anything in here that'll hold at least a couple of gallons of water, and I can turn it into a little aquarium. And it's nice to have a little bit of the outdoors, indoors in your home. So, it's just, I've seen people use like the plastic shoe boxes. You name it.
Yeah.
If you can think about it, if it looks like it'll hold water and it's a good size volume of water, right now I have in my fish room a couple of buckets, 5-gallon buckets, where I'm growing out some fry. So, it's just
fantastic.
It's just anything like I said that'll hold a decent volume of water, you're going to be able to keep some fish. Obviously, I'm not going to put a red tail catfish in a 5-gallon bucket, but there's everything within reason.
Exactly, and I've got to say as well that I have to do a little bit of a shout out here for my son. His name's Jamie. He helped us with the graphics of aquariumagic, and he's got his own YouTube channel. And we had this discussion when I first started this project up with YouTube. And he's a graphic designer, and he wants to do graphics for other up and coming YouTubers who want to, whether it's aquariums, and this is something that he's very good at. So a lot of my graphics come from our son. So if you've got any YouTubers out there that want to impress on their graphics, get in touch with us. We can put them in touch with our son.
What's the name of his channel, to see if any of the moderators can find a link to his channel?
Oh, I'll have to ask him.
I think he's isn't he in the chat?
He
Jamie,
might be
here.
Oh, yeah.
Would you mind sharing the name of your channel so that way we can share it with everybody in the chat and hopefully get some traffic onto your channel. So what are you guys' future plans with? I know you guys are trying to do a little bit of education, but what are some of the goals that you guys would like to reach? Some milestones that you'd like to accomplish within the next year?
Well, really, for me personally, is just to get the word out to people that this hobby is for everybody, not just for specific groups. This can be a hobby for every age group. So that's my main achievement, and the videos that we're going to be uploading soon is how to do that and how to do it without spending a lot of money on it either. So that's my personal achievement. That would be my goal, to get, because I know how beautiful this hobby is and I know how therapeutic it is as well. And I think if more people, can adapt to that, their lives will be so much happier. I'm convinced of it. I don't know about Sarah.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's for us it's so much more about just kind of getting as many people as possible into the hobby and understanding much more about it. I think particularly, people who were probably where I was in terms of understanding anything about fish keeping, and kind of bringing them into it, really.
So if you guys don't, I know you said you have 4 aquariums. Would you guys mind telling us a little bit what kind of fish are the ones? Do you guys like the smaller fish, the bigger fish? What are the things that appeal to you?
Yeah, so we've the main ones for me, I think, really. So we've got platies. I think that's the big thing for me, because we've become quite overrun with fry. and I think I just found that really fascinating, just how that's kind of happened, but just watching them from going, from those tiny babies, and just growing, and just seeing them then at their adult size, and kind of thinking, actually, that all happened in our tank, so I think those are probably my secret favorites.
Well, mine's is we've got neon tetras and catfish as well. But the interesting thing for me is not necessarily the fish. What interests me is the natural habitat that the fish are inside. So the fish are the last things for me. The most important things for me is seeing the plants grow, seeing the snails clean the tank up, seeing all the critters moving about inside the tank, seeing the natural process as if you were in nature, but inside your own home. So that's really what captures me. And we've just uploaded recently a video on the pothos plant, where you can put these plants in your aquarium and get like 5 out of 1 plant, and seeing the roots on that pothos plant grow. So we've got 5 of them in one of our aquariums at the minute, and I'll be taking some out to pot up and put back in the house, and that'll be an instructional video. But what really fascinates me is the whole habitat, the natural process. And Sarah was a little bit worried in case we would have too many fry. I think she counted quite a few the other day. But the natural process is, when these fry are born, they'll soon get gobbled up by other bigger platies. So maintaining the numbers is quite important. We're having to get a 5th tank now to accommodate some of those fry, because some of them have survived, probably about 50.
Plastic toads make wonderful grow-ups. Yeah, but here's the thing though. If you guys are setting these tanks up for people, now you don't have to go and shop for fish. You have the fish to start them off with. And here's the other thing. Now you're going to get more people to like platies. I like platies myself. I like most live bears. I'm very partial to the live bears. So here's the thing though. The reality is, as a new hobbyist, one of the most exciting things that I can remember when I was keeping my very first live bears is to wake up one day and all of a sudden see all these babies in your aquarium. That I've never had more thrills than when I got to see my very first fry in a tank. So starting off new hobbyists with live bears, platies, mollies, guppies, antlers, whatever it is a good way to get them hooked, because once you start seeing the fish there, and then not only that, it makes you be more receptive as to what's going on in the aquarium. So it's another way to hook people into the hobby and keep them in the hobby.
You're so right. And if I can just take you back, you said something so important there. What we're finding now is because we've got such good substrate, our plants, I'm having to trim them down once a week at the minute. We're using that overflow of plants to put into new aquariums we set up for other people, you see, and we can also transfer fish as well. The tank that we've set up recently, we got really cheap. I mean, Sarah was so good; she actually resourced the fish as well. So we got for about, I would say, probably about $12. We got a whole setup of tank, gravel. I then included the deep substrate with my the mud substrate. We had the fish that came with that tank was a red-tailed shark, which is about 4 inches long, and 2 shrimp came with that. So someone's benefited for that with Sarah's resource and all this stuff. It's incredible what she does.
But yeah, and especially if you're trying to put stuff together to give away, it's always very nice when you can get as much of the equipment and the livestock for free to be able to hand it to somebody that's going to benefit from it. So, do you guys, is that something that you would like to see grow within your guys' community, or is it just, do you have is it something that you really want people to be aware of that you guys are doing, or is it something that you want to keep it manageable and just kind of selectively find out who you guys give this stuff to?
Yeah, I think the latter. I think selectively, as you said, help people out. If we advertise this, we'd probably be inundated with people wanting free tanks. The whole point with our upcoming videos, the more kind of education, how to source the tank, how to make the substrate, how to make it all cheap and natural. But with regards to helping people, we kind of sort of like keep that in a small community, and we reach out to the community and help them through aquariums.
Now, how different do you find it now that you've kind of stumbled on different countries doing the hobby? How different is the hobby and means of how it's done where you live and what you get to see compared to, say, America?
In what way? So I don't understand the question.
Do you see a difference in the way people keep aquariums as far as the trends? And then the reason I say that is because what I tend to see is, like, if I look a lot of the Japanese, Asian content, they tend to keep like more manicured type of aquariums. They look like
right.
It's a aquascape kind of theme.
Yeah, got you.
So do you notice a difference? Is there a distinctive difference where you live in the way people keep the hobby, or not? Is it all a broad spectrum?
Well, we've this is in our shout out actually. We've got MD tanks that are not far from us. I don't know if you've come across MD tanks.
Yes, I'm a big fan of his.
Right, yeah. And they're only about half an hour from where we are actually. I love the way he does his aquascaping. I think it's great how he does his substrates, how he puts higher backs to it. I've done that. I've put raised parts of my tank up and it's lovely. What they're doing is absolutely beautiful. And then I look at the way India are doing it, and they're doing it kind of like the way I do it. So I do notice a lot of variations, and equally, it's whatever floats your boat, whatever you fancy doing, whatever takes your fancy, and what you can afford. So what we're kind of doing is looking at all this and thinking, right, what we're more interested in is what's the cheapest option for you if you want to get a tank. You don't have to go and spend, $500 on a tank. You can spend $20 on buying a cheap tank and how to set up your own home. But I think all the different way people do it across England, Scotland, America, it's all great. It's all great. It's whatever suits you and your affordability.
Yes. And the other reason is because I think it's more of a phenomenon with us here in the United States is keeping lots of tanks, big size aquariums. Like I was telling you, we tend to have a little bit of a hoarder problem where we're bigger, everything is bigger. You have people that are building plywood aquariums. I love it because it's great. I find that very fascinating. I find the entire hobby extremely fascinating. I can sit there and watch somebody put lumber together and create this massive aquarium as I can watch one of my friends that's here, Jay, work out of a vesicle that's maybe a gallon size, and how meticulously he'll sit there and add little plants, little stones, all this stuff that he's doing in there. And it's just either one of them. I find them extremely fascinating. I could watch it for hours. And so, yeah, you're right. I mean, it doesn't matter, but I was just wondering what are some of the things that you guys see in Europe versus, the United States versus Asia versus, other countries. And I always find that interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do watch a lot of stuff on YouTube with different countries and how they do it, because I think it's all educational, George, as well. We started with a much smaller tank because I wanted to make sure that I've still retained these skills and not cause any mud blooms or anything like that. So I would always recommend start with a smaller tank if you can. Get used to the fish, get used to the hobby, and if you want to get anything bigger, fantastic. Then you'll have the experience for that.
Yeah, you see, and it's interesting because the philosophy down here that you hear a lot of people tell people is go bigger first, or if you're going to go big, because the parameter swings are a little bit slower. That's that's one of the arguments. I myself, I don't know where I fall in that. As you can see, most of mine are small. The largest tank that I have is the one that's directly behind me in the image, and that's 150 gallon, but it's not a 6 foot long tank. It's more of a 48 inch or 120 centimeters long. So, but
I mean, we've got big tanks, but if you are a new person into the hobby, I don't know about Sarah, but I would always recommend get a small tank, see if you like it, see if you can look after it. We don't want to kill the fish, and then if you want to progress to that, get a bigger tank. That's kind of my philosophy. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think you can always then upgrade, or if it's not quite your thing, it's kind of it's not so much to try and sort out then, I guess, really. And I thought we were just going to stick with the small tank. That was the thing.
It never works out that way. I can tell you that. You always think small, and you end up eventually getting something much bigger than you ever expected to keep.
Well, we've got 5 or 6 tanks at the minute, and I'm going to have to, if I want any more, I'll have to build something in the back garden, I think, because we've got so many all over the house. But what keeps me going is buying tanks for other people and setting up aquariums in their houses. So that stops me buying more tanks for my house.
Yeah, or you can do like MD and move out to the little shed, the tool shed, and then that became into a studio now.
I'd love that. I'd love that.
Well, I know it's what, 12 o'clock now with you guys. It's getting kind of late for you. I don't know if I don't have a problem, but I am trying to be respectful of how late it is. Do you guys have anything else you want people to know about you guys, or anything you want to share with the audience?
No, I think we've said about what I've said about what I've needed to say. What about you?
Yeah, I think I have too. Really, I think it's two very different experiences, and I've kind of found a mutual hobby.
And also as well that. Sorry, did you want to say something?
No.
And I so like respect the way that you've actually got us on your show. I've watched your live streams for quite a while now, and what I've noticed is that you help give people a platform, and you're very, very. I think you're one of the most talented talk show hosts, if I can say that, to that I've seen yet, because you're so welcoming. You give other people a platform. And that's a big deal for people like us trying to get up there to shout out, to try and help other people. So what you're doing is absolutely amazing, and I would highly recommend it for someone like yourself who's built up a lot of followers, to then give other people an opportunity to get their ideas across. So what you do is absolutely amazing.
Thank you. Well, and here's, like I was saying earlier, I would have done this much sooner as far as trying to have live streams with guests and stuff like that, because to this day, I'm very grateful for the people that were very welcoming to me and allowing them to participate in the live streams. We have a gentleman here in this community that goes by Rico Stan. And Rico Stan is one of those people that is the sole purpose of having really his live stream is to try to showcase a lot of the newcomers that are coming in, or anybody that's within the community, to give them an opportunity to speak their piece, whatever it is that they want to talk about. And like him, there's been other people that have allowed me to be here. Now, I would have loved to have done this before, much earlier, but here's the thing though. What would have been the point for me to try to do some of these live streams when I only had maybe 3 people watching me? Because then I'm not doing that person justice to bring them onto my channel and try to give them a platform. What platform? There is no platform. I started doing this and I felt a little bit more comfortable about doing this because this is something that I truly wanted to do, is go out there. And I spent a lot of time going through YouTube, looking at smaller channels, find stuff that's interesting, and reaching out to them to see if they would like to be on one of my streams, because I remember how much I benefited from being on somebody else's stream that had a little bit broader audience than I did. But once I saw my numbers go up a little bit more on Instagram, I knew that maybe some of the people there would be interested in seeing what I'm doing. The numbers in TikTok kind of back me up a little bit more too. And then finally hitting the milestone of 1,000 here, I felt comfortable saying, okay, now if I bring on a guest, at least I'll have at least 10 people watching.
Yeah.
I've been very fortunate. I've been very blessed that the community has supported me extremely well. I mean, to sit here and currently have 22 people listening to what I have to say and what you guys have to say is amazing to me.
Yeah.
And I find that fascinating, and I just can't say thank you enough. I'm not doing this for money. My objective has never, ever been about numbers and money. Numbers in question is the only reason numbers drive me is because when I get to share the screen with somebody else, that person that's sharing the screen is now exposed to that many more people. And hopefully some people will gravitate to their channel. And that's the only reason that I'm even interested in any sort of numbers, is because it'll allow me to do that. I find this very interesting. I like, as you can see, I enjoy talking to people, and
Yeah.
I love meeting new people. And if we have already something in common as far as much as this hobby, it makes it that much easier to interact with somebody else.
Yeah.
And that's the part that I really have enjoyed. I feel very fortunate that I'm allowed to do this, and we'll see where this goes. Now, as far as my experience from all of this, yes, I've had employment where I was required to speak in front of large groups. Um, I've always been a little bit more of an extrovert than an introvert, so which is kind of weird for this hobby. And so I like engaging with people. I like getting to know people, but I do watch a lot of other podcasts, and I take a lot of stuff away from what they do. One of the things that I need to learn is not to talk as much and allow you guys to shine more. Right? And I'm very cognizant of that. And the other thing is that I'm very horrible about, and I really do apologize for those that are on the chat. If I'm going to pay attention to who's sharing the screen with me, I find it very hard to be able to focus on what you're telling me and be able to watch the chat. So, and I apologize for that. I'm not ignoring the people that are here supporting me. By no means. I am honestly grateful for those that are willing to come and donate whatever amount of time I decide to be here. And from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you, all of you guys, for being here. And if you accept my, the moderator button, you guys doing all that work, it's just extremely, I'm extremely grateful for that. But I do try to be as much as focused on the guest because I want to know more about the person. And like I've always said, this has always been a very selfish endeavor for me because I get the opportunity to get to know you. And what I want to be able to do is I want to share that experience with everybody else that's here today. And hopefully, they get to experience the same things that I am. And I know sometimes a lot of questions are asked and I miss a lot of questions because I am trying to pay attention to what's going on, even though I sometimes have a lot of distractions going around the house. And right now, the problem is, and you alluded to earlier, is the heat. Typically, I do this from the garage, and I tend to be a little bit more focused in the garage because I don't have any interruptions. Right now, I got a green screen behind me that's showing an image of where I typically sit, but I'm actually sitting in the dining room table. And so here, let me pull the curtain on that and see if I can do that. So it's funny because if you really get to see where I'm sitting, I'm actually sitting in front of a window. But what you see behind me is actually the same spot where I have my table and everything set up. And so if you watch some of my other live streams, the only difference is you'll see the fish move. If you're looking at my fish right now, they're frozen in space. But I'm just doing it. Once the weather breaks, I'll be back in my garage.
You're such a great ambassador for this hobby. It's really sort of like we're so delighted that you could have us with you tonight. Well, our nighttime, you daytime, but we just think that it's so special what you're doing, and you don't often get that hospitality on YouTube. So what you're doing is an amazing job, and we'll keep watching you for a long time.
It's really just have this as a platform. It's amazing.
Well, thank you very much. They gave me a hard time about cheating my background. No, but it's just it's one of those things. I've met some wonderful people doing this, and just just interacting with a lot of people in the chat and other people's streams. To me, that is so fascinating. I'm not fascinating, but so rewarding. I like having those conversations. The problem is when you're a hobbyist like we are, is there's not a whole lot of people with your immediate circle that you can talk about what's going on in your fish room, what's going on with your aquariums, what you want to do with your aquariums, that kind of stuff. You have to come to where there's a group of people where you can share that with. And that's what this is for me. It's an opportunity to be able to interact with like-minded people. It's an opportunity for me to get to know people on more than just a chat. This is the closest thing a lot of the times that's going to be to an actual face-to-face, if you want to call that. And I really like it and I really enjoy it. So
it's really interesting you say that, George, because the people that we help, and it's all free of charge, like yourself, we don't make anything out of this. but it's just seeing the enjoyment and excitement that the reactions show when someone puts a fish tank in their house and sets it up, and it's just so pleasurable for us to see that face to face, just like kind of like what you were talking about there, isn't it, Sarah?
Yeah, definitely. And knowing the benefit that they're going to get from it, sort of longer time as well.
And then we have to maintain it as well. We don't just say that's it, goodbye. We keep in touch with them, and you know, it's like a sociable thing as well, because the connection is the hobby.
Yeah, and there's always that when you're keeping aquariums, that sense of pride that, you know, especially once you start getting experience and you start tinkering with your aquarium, you start trying to place little plants here and there, and to see that what you had in your mind, visualized in your mind, to be able to actually physically do it and translate it to that media, and you're sitting there going, "Oh wow, that actually didn't come out half as bad as I thought it would," or to see those fish that you're keeping thrive, and if they reproduce, that's like even a bigger boost, because that's a very good indicator that you're doing things right, and the fish are happy and they're willing to they enjoy that environment, that they're willing to reproduce and stuff like that. So it's a very rewarding, but it can also be a very hard experience, but you know, with loss and stuff like that. But that's why you gotta have a little bit of emotional balance to it, and a lot of patience. The one thing that people ask me all the time, hey, you know, what's the one thing that I need for fish keeping? You need to have patience.
Yeah. And if I could do what we do in our spare time, if I could do that as a full-time thing, that would be a dream come true. But we have to hit reality. We've got jobs, so whatever we can do in our spare time is a bonus. But I can imagine some fish keepers do that as a full-time job, and I'm so jealous.
Well, you see, I'm not, and here's why. Because I think the minute this becomes a job, I'm not going to enjoy it anymore. But that's just me, because I know myself. So if this were to become my sole source, you know, the hobby become my sole source of employment, I don't think I would. One, you would be extremely busy, that you wouldn't have the time to sit down and enjoy your aquariums. Because that's, to me, that's the most important part about keeping aquariums, is the actual time you get to spend in front of it without just to enjoy it. Because you're doing water changes, you're doing this trimmings or whatever, cleaning, but that to me is not the enjoyable part of the hobby. For a lot of people, that's the sole purpose of keeping an aquarium, is that busy time. For me, I like to observe. I can sit there for hours and just watch. That's the biggest fun for me.
Sarah does that all the time.
I've actually got a specific chair that I put in front of the tank to sit on.
Well, a lot of the things, one of my favorite things, especially now once the fall comes around, because right now it's not very, very nice. Once we start getting the cooler weathers, my wife knows if she comes home and the house is quiet, she'll go in the fish room. I'll be sitting I have a chair that pivots all the way around, and I'll be sitting there enjoying a cigar, having my favorite drink, and just watching fish tanks. Nothing on, maybe some background music, because I love music. That's everywhere I'm at. I'm always listening to. I gotta have noise, and that's just, to me, as good as watching TV. But, you know, I'm kind of weird.
It's really interesting you say that, because when we got back into it, we've never had the TV on. That's permanently off now.
Yes.
Our entertainment is all the fish tanks that we've got.
Yeah, for me, it's either I'm doing something working with the tanks, because I got way too many, or the other thing is I'm watching somebody else stream somebody else's content. I'm looking. I've got to a point now, because I'm always constantly reaching out, that the algorithm gives me a lot of the smaller channels, which is not very common for what I understand the people to get. So as soon as I see a name that I don't recognize, I immediately go out there. The other day, he's not a very small channel, but he's very new to me, is a gentleman that's out of South Africa. And I wish I remembered the name of his. It's his name, but I don't want to say it because I don't know how to pronounce it. But I think it's spelled DROEKS, and aquatics or something like that. But I just recently started watching one of his little shorts came up, and I started watching. Man, he is so interesting. He's funny. He's really funny the way he presents and stuff. But I think that a lot of his daytime job, because I think he's a big time real estate realtor down in South Africa, has prepared him to be in front and be entertaining and all that stuff. But a lot of the information that he's putting out there is also very, very attuned to the way I think and my philosophy with fish keeping. So I've truly enjoyed his channel. And I was surprised that he actually followed me. I was like, what? And but you know, that's kind of what I enjoy the most. It's that interaction with people that I know under any other normal circumstances I would have never gotten the opportunity to meet them.
And that's kind of the same as what we're kind of doing when we set up tanks for people. In most cases, we've never met them before, and it's the interaction and the enjoyment and the excitement you see on other people's faces when someone comes into their own home and sets something up like that. It's so special.
Oh, he found it. Skulls Aquatics found the website I was talking about. You must follow him. Yeah, but yeah, you know, like I said, I just want to thank you guys so much. Oh, I never asked you, how did you guys come across my channel?
Well, I come across you on YouTube because I found you straight away. And I think it was on a live stream where I first found you, and I thought, well, this guy's really interesting actually, and you know, you captured me, and then I was hooked on that point. And I've followed you ever since.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I greatly appreciate the follow. I know I haven't really put out. Well, the thing is, I don't want to fall into the trap when I'm making my content that is recycled material, and what I mean by that. There's a lot of good YouTubers out there that have done much better jobs at presenting certain things that I don't feel I could do it justice. So I don't do videos about that stuff. Talking about the nitrogen cycle, talking about how to build an aquarium, build a filter. There's a guy that's extremely good at doing that. So why would I want to spend my time trying to do something like that when I could rather refer you to that person who's going to do a much better job of explaining it? The only things that I've usually put out on stuff is the stuff that I'm personally doing that I can explain to you why it is that I'm doing what I'm doing. But the crutch has not become the fact that I get to do live streams, and that's kind of I don't know if I'm going to pay a price because I'm no longer creating content on there. But at the end of the day, this was the ultimate goal, was to be able to have a stream where I get to meet wonderful people all the time.
You should be on daytime TV, that's for sure. But it's really interesting because the point you have just made is something that what we're trying to create is we don't want to make it too complicated for people to understand. We kind of targeting the new people without having to watch quite length of YouTube videos about nitrates and etc. We're trying to make it sort of like easy for people to follow by setting up in your own home, showing images of setting up tanks in your own home or your garden, and just being very, very like simplifying it all. And we feel that maybe people could then find it easier to maybe get into giving them the basics, just like simple.
Like if they were going kind of like right from scratch with, you know, not really lots and lots of knowledge about it. You know, I know when we were kind of doing some of the more recent videos, I was kind of saying, well, actually, if I was kind of looking at doing some of this stuff myself, I would probably just want to know, how do I do it? Rather than kind of understanding lots of science and things behind it. So so I think probably a bit further down the line, if I kind of had a bit more of an understanding, maybe I'd be a bit more into that. But I think certainly just thinking about how you actually do the process is kind of
So
where we're
less
aiming our videos at the moment.
less scary for people. Trying to make it user friendly for normal families in a normal house. How do we get a tank in the house?
Oh, well, one thing I got to say real quick is Jeff Kane, thank you so much. He just gifted 10 memberships to my channel. Thank you so much for doing that. The lucky recipients, let me see, I believe was whoa, how many were there? So it looks like My Fish Tank Aquatics, SC Kellahus, Renee's House, Nancy B in Tennessee, Barbara Jackson, Maloney for Photography and Aquatics, Bionic Bigfoot, KG Aquatics, Jennifer Weaver, Nano the Aquarium Guy, Cody V. I think those were some of the ones that were actually able to get those memberships for my channel. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jeff, for doing that. I greatly appreciate that. I always feel weird when people give me stuff. I'm not used to that. I don't know how to react. I don't know how to behave. It's not something that
take it as a compliment. Take it as a compliment.
I do. Trust me, I do. But it always makes me a little embarrassed.
Yeah, I know, and I think what it is because they want to keep you on air doing what you're doing because you're so good at it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, and hopefully I can do this for much longer. I mean, I really enjoy this. Like again, the hardest thing if you're gonna try to follow me is that it's not a scheduled time or date. And like I've always said, I think it's a benefit, a plus and a minus, because a lot of people could enjoy this as a replay, but the upside is every time it's always different. The people that are getting an opportunity to be part of the stream, because we all work different time schedules and we have different things going on in life. So it just happens, if you happen to be available at that time and moment, then it gives you an opportunity to watch something. And it also allows me to be able to have guests like you guys, where although right now I would have not had a problem with going later at night, so you guys would have been in the morning, but you guys were willing to do this. It's almost 1 o'clock at where you guys are at. I can't believe how late you guys are like if it was just morning. But that's one of the upsides. It opens up my opportunity to engage with different people because of my flexibility with the time. And but that's it. I just want to thank you guys so much. One, for reaching out to me and actually wanting to be part of a part of this. That was super exciting that actually somebody wanted to be here out of their own free will. Not that anybody hasn't been here out of their own free will, but what I'm getting at is that you guys took the initiative, where usually it's me taking the initiative to somebody else. And but thank you for that. I really enjoyed this. It's so awesome that I got to meet you guys, because I always enjoy being able to put a face to either an icon or something else like that, especially when I know your videos, you still haven't really come out in front of the camera. That was my first videos too. It took me a while to build the courage to be able to get in front of the camera. Why, I don't know, because like I said, I've done public speaking for quite a bit of time. I've actually worked in the classroom as a teacher. So the whole being able to talk to strangers has never really, it hasn't been difficult as of late, because it was very difficult at the beginning. But thank you.
You're doing a brilliant job. And from us all the way over in England, we'd just like to say thank you.
Thank you. And also, don't be surprised if you happen to come on one of these streams and it's in Spanish. That's the other thing that I'm working on. I'm trying to find more people. It just feels like, from what I'm trying to accomplish to get to meet people, if I do it in Spanish, it opens up a whole other part of this world to me. Absolutely. And I'm just having a blast. I'm really enjoying this. And
well, it's interesting you say that, George, because in some of my shots, because I know I've got a bit of an audience in India, I will put Indian music, which are from good Indian artists, to try and reach out to people. So very similar to what you just said.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys. Do you guys have anything else you'd like to say before we go off?
No, just yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's been really good.
Thank you. We
right.
appreciate it.
Well, thank you, and thank you guys. Thank you for those that are in the chat. Thank you so much. Again, can't believe you guys were willing to donate an hour and a half of your time to be here with me. But thank you very much, and we'll see you guys soon. So take care.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
Josh. Bye. Bye.
Bye bye. Let's see.